Welcome to Coping Together, Mental Health Association of Central Florida's live web series dedicated to helping you develop coping strategies and wellness tools related to COVID-19, as well as talk about mental health. Coping Together was created in response to COVID-19's mandatory social distancing orders. This show seeks to learn and educate. We do not speak for any particular group. Overall, Coping Together serves as a platform through which we can demystify and unpack mental health concepts and hear from experts in the field. Please note that this show may discuss sensitive topics including but not limited to sexual assault, suicide, and various traumas. If you find yourself feeling upset or struggling during any episode, listen to your body and pause the input. We will post related resources. Remember, it's okay to get help.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of Coping Together. I'm your host, Faith, with the Mental Health Association of Central Florida, here to talk to you about all things related to mental health and COVID-19 and how we're all going to get through this journey together. So today, I'm excited, as I'm always excited to welcome a guest, but especially excited to welcome my colleague and friend, Cliff Marvin. He is the Director of Public Affairs with Career Source Central Florida. Cliff, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you, Faith.
Very wonderful. So we're here today to talk about, it might be kind of indicative with the name of the company, but we're going to talk about how career and mental health play a role. And so I will kind of start by saying that I really wanted to get your opinion, Cliff, as someone who works with the company, on your personal opinion about how mental health and career can play a role into someone's life, as well as especially in light of COVID-19. And so before we start that, I want to ask if you would mind sharing a little bit about yourself with our audience, as well as a little bit about Career Source Central Florida and what you all do.
Fantastic. First of all, Faith, thank you so much for having me here. It's a very important episode or webcast, if you will. This is an incredibly important topic that I think, essentially is the motivator for our Central Florida economy. That said, I have the great pleasure to serve as the Director of Public Affairs for Career Source Central Florida. Essentially, I am an advocate for our organization, for businesses, for individuals throughout Central Florida to kind of connect those who are in need of either, skilling or upskilling or pivoting from one career to another, to help get them to the right facility and right next step in their career journey. So we're the connectors. Career Source Central Florida is the connector for individuals and businesses, and essentially aligning those needs through the federal funding that we receive.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that insight. And I think that's a pretty good segue into, like you said, you're talking about the process of if someone is shifting to a new position or anything like that. And so I think that kind of enters into how mental health might play a role. And so I guess I'll ask you, from your perspective, how would you say mental health is related to one's career?
Yeah, I think, obviously stability is the most important component to life, right? And to being productive. And so, there's what we've seen, what we've experienced in terms of working with those in the hospitality and tourism industry is a great sense of displacement, right? And that creates unease, whether it's mental or otherwise, and that creates a general form of instability and question, and that is a detriment in terms of going out and finding your next career step. What we counsel, what I suggest, what I recommend, based on that is essentially to focus on your skills and to focus on who you are, and take resolve in the fact that, one, you do have incredible skill. Two, you know yourself better than anyone else on the planet. And three, that you've taken the time to hone a craft or a skill, right? And then four, looking at it from the vantage point that you have the ability to transition utilizing those skills into so many different ways. I think it was Einstein who said, wisdom is the ability to discover alternatives. And that truly seems to be, the mantra for 2020 in terms of those that are interested in, pivoting from one space to another. And the idea of having that sense of mental stability where you're resolute in your understanding of whom you are and what you're willing to accept, and of course, what your skills are, right? And how you're able to then apply them in other spaces will really give you the confidence to be able to go into an interview setting and of course dominate, and of course then be selected for that role. And if for whatever reasons you're not selected for that role, just again, remaining resolute in your skill set and your belief in yourself will really resonate with that person across the table from you who's looking to hire for that next role.
I think that that's a really great point. And if I can add as well, I think sometimes with mental health, we talk about, like you said, there's that whole process of transitioning to a new career, anything like that. There's a lot that I think mental health plays a role in terms of that process in and of itself with stress. I don't know about you if you're a nervous person when it comes to interviews. I'm a big nervous person when it comes to testing or anything like that. So when it comes to setting in an application for somewhere, I'm like that person that's like shaking as I hit submit to send that in. Would you say that that is an aspect of mental health that also plays a role?
Absolutely. I mean, we're all nervous, right, in terms of the next step, because you think about what a job means to you, or you think about what your career means to you. It's again, that concept of stability, right? Having the ability to be able to provide for yourself and for others or for your family, that creates a sense of stability. And when you're risking an opportunity to go out and try something new, or to apply for a role that you may not feel completely comfortable in attaining, there is a sense of anxiety, and there is a sense of a nervousness that's created simply because you're teetering on the edge of what you feel you may be capable of. And that's what I'm suggesting is what you should revel in, is revel in the fact that you have skills that other people will find exciting and advantageous, and of course useful and productive to finding a new role, and of course to augmenting a company, right? Because when you come into an organization, you're putting your creative stamp or your cultural impact, or all your previous career history on the table for them to see, but also to absorb into that new culture. And that really does essentially assist you in providing a great complement to that new role or organization. And all of that really truly boils down to, again, you having that stability and that sense of knowledge and understanding who you are and what skills and what you'll accept from a characteristic perspective to demonstrate and share with that organization, and being yourself. I mean, as silly as that sounds, but just being yourself and being able to bring that to the table and allowing people to see that,
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that we're talking about someone willingly transitioning into a new career, wanting to change what they're doing. And I think that with COVID-19, one thing that I also want to touch on is there are a lot of people who've been faced with it's not exactly their own decision or their choice to be leaving the career that they've been in maybe for quite some time. And so, when considering COVID, how would you say personally, from your personal perspective, would someone's mental health maybe be impacted by COVID or have been impacted by COVID?
Well, COVID's real and it's devastating. And it's alarming because we don't know the long-term implications of how COVID will impact you year over year, right? So it's not like a traditional flu form where you're getting a flu vaccination because this strain of the flu is worse than last year's. This is an entirely different beast and something to be taken very seriously. First off, and from a science perspective, there's a lot of uncharted territory associated with COVID-19 in terms, again, of its long-term impacts, and of course,
Right.
how it impacts everyone very differently, right? There's those that have very moderate cases of COVID-19, and then those that have extreme cases. And there's really not a scientific explanation yet at this point as to why that is. So I would preface that initially. Secondly, from a mental health perspective, I do feel like, the quest not to get COVID-19 can be a little anxious ridden, can be a little nervousing, or as my nephew would say, nervousing, solely because
A pretty accurate way of phrasing it.
yeah.
I would say.
I think because people genuinely, you know, I shouldn't say most people, I should say some people are genuinely concerned with, again, taking those precautions in terms of, you know, the social distancing and of course the mask wearing, and making sure that you're not putting yourself in a situation where, you know, there's large groups of individuals and you're kind of just enjoying yourself in a huge crowd of individuals, or, you know, what are referred to as super spreader events. So I think what's been, you know, interesting or fascinating is you can drive yourself crazy with, you know, trying to protect yourself from this. And that's an unhealthy position to be in as well. So what, you know, what we've discussed, what we talk about in terms of, you know, with our employers and of course with our, you know, constituents is, you know, doing the best you can. You know, I mean, there's really, this is an airborne virus, and there's really not a lot outside of the social distancing and really trying to, you know, keep out of those large group environments, and of course the mask wearing, that you can do beyond that, right? Like you can get it by sitting next to somebody for over 15 minutes who doesn't even know that they're exposed, right? And that you've been comfortable with previously. So they don't even know that they're carrying. So you could take all the precaution in the world, and I just would argue or suggest that, you know, to be kind to yourself and to recognize the fact that you can do everything in the world you want to prevent it. And for whatever reasons, there's that moment of slip up where, you know, unfortunately you'll be impacted by it. And so you have to have patience with yourself, but at the same time, you know, you have to be cautious. So it's finding the right balance, I think, is really the best way to go.
Yeah. And you know, when you're considering for a lot of people and the impact that career could, you know, play a role in this, you've got people who are now going back to work. You've got people who have been furloughed. When we consider career and how that plays a role, would you say, like you said, there's that, you can do everything to try to do it right, but would you say that there is a big strain on someone's mental health when it comes to going back into the workplace now, as a lot of people have phased back in, whether it's part-time or full-time back into the office?
Yeah, I think what you know, I talk about the optimistic view of 2020 a lot, and 2020 has been a dumpster fire in many regards, on a number of levels. But as an optimistic person, as someone who sees opportunity in the less fortunate situations, you know, 2020 has demonstrated, you know, at least with the employers that we work with, like those organizations and company that truly live and walk the walk and talk the talk when it comes to culture, right? When they say that they really care about their employees, right? And so they're doing whatever they can do to protect their individual employees because they recognize those individuals as, you know, assets to an organization that leads to a much greater whole. And so we've seen, you know, companies, businesses, and organizations that are really, really responsive to COVID and that do take and are sharing, you know, every possible precaution, you know, from, you know, making sure that they have time to go out and get tested if that's something that they need, or providing masks for them and other PPE, and making sure they have the possibility to work remotely when appropriate. And of course, having the opportunity to have the resource at home to be able to do that as well. So there's those types of companies that are out there, and I would request that, you know, if you're looking for a role, that you find those companies and you begin to support those companies, you know, because it's those companies that are going to make a dramatic impact in our Central Florida economy moving forward, because they're taking care of their individual employees.
So let me ask you a question real quick, Cliff, from the perspective of someone who's, you know, young enough to be going into the workforce soon, or, you know, like we said, a lot of people may have been not by their choosing. They've had to leave their career, they've been furloughed or whatever it is. Do you think that moving forward, from your own, you know, your opinion, is that something that maybe people should ask in an interview, is like, how has your company, you know, responded to COVID-19? How have you, you know, worked with your employees or something on those regards?
Yeah, I would say, you know, the more preparation you do for an interview, the better. The more you understand whom you're meeting with, the more you understand about the company and the culture, or at least what it says on the website. Or if you have the opportunity to reach out to somebody who works there and have the ability to be able to like truly ask them what it's like, the more diligence that you show, the greater differential that will be in an interview process. And the opportunity to ask, how are you treating your employees during COVID, really opens up both for you and for that employer the opportunity to, if you're the employer, just lay it out there and say, hey, we hit a home run, we value our employees, and this is what we're doing. But as a prospective employee of that organization, if you find dissatisfaction in the way that they've handled it, then that's not the right company for you, right? And so it can work on both sides of the aisle, and it's a really apt question to ask, because you really do want to know whom you're working for, because ultimately, when you get a job, you're not really that interested in jumping around from one company to another company to another company. And you want to establish that sense of
stability.
Yeah.
Just bringing it back. I was bringing it back to your first point.
Yeah. No. It's an excellent point. Yes. You want to establish that stability. Yeah.
I definitely agree with you. And I think that, when we consider a lot, like you said, 2020 has been, for lack of a better word, difficult in a lot of regards.
I actually said it was a dumpster fire.
Yeah, that is what you said. I was trying to avoid that word, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
No, it's definitely a dumpster fire. And I saw video proof of that yesterday, I think on this thing called the internet, which is really interesting.
Wow.
I went on this YouTube thing, and there was a very, very funny commercial of, I think it's probably from like Match.com.
I've seen that commercial. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
Very much indicative of, I think that commercial that you're talking about is, for any of you guys who don't know, it's basically a Match.com commercial and finding love in the midst of what many would call a dumpster fire, as Cliff astutely observed and shared. But very much, I think one thing people have said is that it's also about finding the appreciation for the things that you can and have in life as well. Whether it's having, go ahead.
A match is a match.
A match is a match. That's very true. So real quick, because I would go on and on about that, because I'm a big fan of the background music in that song, or in that commercial.
Yeah, that was also good. Yeah,
you're right. But so in regards to the Central Florida and the pandemic and the dumpster fire, as you said, one aspect that's definitely been hard has been the impact on the job market. And I kind of wanted to ask you, from your perspective and from the work you do with Career Source Central Florida, how has the pandemic impacted the job market? What areas have we seen the most loss in terms of employees and work, really?
Well, so we're in the 10th month of dealing with this economic crisis, right? And the pandemic. And it's, I would say, like, the biggest surprise to, the fallout, right? Like, because our economy just like literally stopped overnight to a large extent, and intentionally. But the pace of technology has really truly changed the workplace. The virtual workforce that we're all participating in, that you and I are, here on this Zoom call, is essentially here to stay. And companies know now, through this global pandemic, that individuals like ourselves can be as productive at home as they can in the workspace, and that's something that was not necessarily a given. So that's kind of been an impact of this 2020. Many businesses have moved to remote. They moved to a remote environment within 2 to 3 weeks of this global pandemic. So, they need now to reduce their workspaces, leverage the agility to change how services are offered, and meet new customer demands, right? So that might be like changing hours and those kinds of things. And then not only has the pace of technology changed for the better, I would argue, But it's also created new markets
I'll
in terms
share it
of
with
like
you, and you can
Instacart
maybe
and
bring it
Shipt
into
and
this
DoorDash and Uber Eats,
podcast
where once
of when
they
it
were,
was first opened
considered a
in the
novelty,
community.
right?
So we
To a
have a
large extent,
program here
those
called Project
organizations were
Cheer.
a luxury, right? Like you just didn't feel
yeah,
like
a
doing something.
convenience. If you could afford it, you would get your groceries delivered.
Yeah, and now it's essentially and quickly became a new way of life, right? Like that's one of the new norms, right? Because you would much rather have, Shipped, deliver your groceries to you, or Amazon Fresh deliver your groceries to you, because you don't want to take the risk of being in the supermarket for whatever reasons, right? Or if you have extreme health, needs, or not needs, but if you have extreme health conditions, yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're good.
If you have those extreme health conditions and you don't want to put yourself in that risky situation.
Yeah.
Right? So those kinds of things, I think, the greatest job loss that we've experienced or we've seen obviously locally here is the hospitality and tourism sector.
Yeah.
And now we have an opportunity as a community to, address the increased skill needs and education needs of our region's workers, to make sure that, they can prepare themselves for in-demand jobs, right? So, technology, as I just mentioned, is booming. And so, technology related positions in terms of like increased support for remote users, right? Like, the help desk, if you will, cybersecurity, because now people are working remotely and, there's confidential information that could easily be hacked. And, how do we handle, cybersecurity and the things? So companies are dealing with that, but they need professionals who know and understand cybersecurity that can, protect those organizations. New application development. So new applications are being created to secure working. And then of course, there's network support, but on a more specific level, healthcare is predominantly exploding, right? So from a nursing perspective, healthcare support roles, from the greeter that welcomes you to the emergency room or to a doctor's office, to the person taking your blood pressure, to the person updating your chart, the education and awareness in public health and sort of the development of COVID-19 vaccinations are going to create an entirely new job market, in terms of how that's going to get administered and essentially, educating individuals as to the efficacy of those drugs, right? Because there's been some consternation that those drugs may not be as efficient as they should. I always say trust the science, but that's just my personal opinion on that. But you do want to do your research and diligence on that. But the COVID-19 vaccinations are going to create like a new industry. Logistics is another area. So, from a warehouse and robotics perspective, as well as, stockers and fillers and truck drivers, movers of goods, all of those areas are really experiencing a sense of increase right now. And then if you look at construction, we have been an economy based on growth. There has been some retraction there, but we still, as a whole, from a construction perspective, have an enormous need of individuals. And those are roles that, someone who is in hospitality can easily transition from hospitality into healthcare or into construction or into IT. And those are, some of the gap fills or upskilling measures that we have at CareerSource Central Florida that we can assist people with to make those transitions much more smoothly and efficiently, but also create that sense of stability so that they are feeling productive and back to where they once were mentally.
That was actually like a perfect segue because I was going to ask, is that something that CareerSource Central Florida can help someone with? So thank you. And that's actually all the questions that I have for you, Cliff. I did want to ask you if there's anything else that you think our audience should know on this topic or anything like that.
There's two things that I would counsel, from a personal and professional perspective. The first is, it's devastating to be sitting across the table, or in some circumstances receiving an email saying that, you know, you've been discharged from a position, or that you have been furloughed. There is that moment of, what am I going to do? That sense of panic, that sense of terror. You know, how am I going to handle this? Tomorrow is a new day, and it leads to the opportunity for you to create, you know, a better world for yourself. And as silly as that may seem or sound, you really have to believe in your own innate ability to move beyond your current situation in every regard. And, you know, I'm not just saying this because I work at CareerSource Central Florida, but the opportunity to, you know, receive education, the opportunity to get upskilled quickly, efficiently, and affordably. The majority of the programs that we utilize right now to assist people who are coping with the impact of COVID-19, again, being displaced or let go or however, those programs are complementary to you as a U.S. citizen, as a taxpayer here in Central Florida. And you need to take advantage of the resources that you have around you, and not be afraid to take advantage of those resources. There's a lot of people that have not ever been comfortable being in a food line before, or have not been comfortable taking assistance or getting the assistance that they need. Now is the time to really put aside any presupposition and get out there and take advantage of those resources around you. These resources were put in place to assist you in this great time of need, and now is that great time of need. And in the future, you'll be able to assist somebody when it's their time. And I just would ask that you have patience with yourself and persistence.
I think that was a really wonderful note to close on, especially with the, like you said, you know, being willing and able to help yourself in this time when you need it. And then, you know, moving forward, hopefully there'll be a point in time where you can help other people who are in that same situation. And so thank you so much, Cliff, for, you know, talking to us about this topic and sharing a little bit about, you know, CareerSource Central Florida. For all of you watching, we will include any information we have on CareerSource Central Florida. If you have any questions about this video in particular, please feel free to reach out to us at the Mental Health Association, as well as if you have any topics you'd like to see from us in the future, please feel free to reach out. And as always, if you feel like you are struggling in any sense with your mental health, or you know someone who is, please feel free to reach out to us at the Mental Health Association, as we are here to help you get connected to resources such as, you know, CareerSource Central Florida, if your struggle is in the job market, or if your struggle is struggling with depression or anxiety. You know, we're here for you, and we just want to remind you that it's okay to get help. And so with that, thank you again, Cliff, for being here. Thank you to all of you, of course. And you all have a great day, and I will see you next time. Thank you.